The Nazis tried to destroy Britain with fake money. It was called Operation Bernhard. It's spring 1945, an Alpine lake on a pitch-black night. A boat sits low in the water, groaning under the weight. Lanterns swing on hooks and throw thin, nervous light across the surface. Men shove crates overboard fast, too fast for anything ordinary. Ropes burn through gloved hands. Wood hits water with a dull, final weight. One crate. Then another. Then another. Inside these boxes isn't gold. It's British banknotes. Bundled, banded, stamped with the face of a king. Perfect pounds. So perfect, they weren't meant to fund a war. They were meant to break trust in Britain's money, to flood the system with doubt, to turn every shop counter, every bank queue, every soldier's pay packet into the same quiet question. Is this real? This wasn't a heist. It was a weapon. And if this lake is swallowing the evidence tonight, it's because the operation behind it was too dangerous to survive collapse. Which means the real story isn't the lake. It's the men who had to print perfection to stay alive. It's after midnight at Sachsenhausen in 1943. Inside Block 19, the air is warm and oily from machines that never stop running. A printing press cycles like a heartbeat, over and over. White sheets go in one side and come out the other with lines so fine they almost look like hair. At the center is Adolf Berger, a printer from Slovakia with ink permanently under his fingernails. He knows paper inside and out. He understands exactly how much pressure you need, and he can feel when an impression is perfect just by touch. Solomon Smolyanov watches the work like he's looking at precious stones. He's an artist and a forger, someone who can pull an entire face out of a metal plate using nothing but tiny, invisible dots. He holds a magnifying glass up to the portrait of King George VI and frowns. Again, he says quietly, that sheet gets tossed, because the better the money got, the closer they came to becoming disposable. The pressman nods and makes tiny adjustments. The plate gets slightly warmer. The ink gets one drop thinner. The pressure increases just a half turn. Then the next sheet starts its journey through the machine. 6 presses run on 2 12-hour shifts. That's 24 hours a day, every single day. Metal, paper, and men who know that one mistake, just one, can cost them their lives. About 140 specialists work here at full capacity, handpicked from all over Europe. Most of them used to be typesetters, engravers, bookkeepers, experts in their fields before they became prisoners. Their only value now is their skill. At peak production, they pump out about 65,000 notes every month. 65,000 perfect sheets that look and feel exactly like Bank of England fivers. The best ones go to spy networks in neutral countries. The lower quality ones get pushed through gray markets to pay for things nobody's keeping receipts for. Berger remembers the first time a sheet passes inspection. The whole room lets out a breath they didn't know they were holding. A guard lights a cigarette and the smoke curls blue over the press. They tape a sample sheet on the wall as a reference, but really, it's a threat. The unspoken message is brutal. Be as perfect as that sheet on the wall, or you're finished. His hands have to stay steady if he wants to stay alive. Lose the precision, lose the line, and he might lose more than that. British fivers use regular letterpress printing, not the harder-to-fake method that leaves ridges you can actually feel when you touch them. The paper is rag-based with a Britannia watermark. The ink is firm and doesn't bleed into the fibers. Match that paper's crisp feel, match how deep the plate bites into it, and your fake isn't really a fake anymore. It's identical. Inside Block 19, the presses run warm, so the ink sets into those fibers just right and feels authentic. Registration pins keep everything perfectly aligned. Every tiny decision, the exact shade of black, how fast sheets feed through, adds up to creating a note that a banker would approve without a second look. A sheet that passes inspection buys you more hours alive. A sheet that fails, that buys real trouble. Smolyanov stops the press and points with just his fingernail at a shadow on the king's cheek. It's too flat, not quite right. The pressman understands immediately and makes a tiny fix. They run it again. Better, Smolyanov says quietly, because quiet is always safer in a place like this. Outside the door, an engine coughs and a dog barks. But inside this printing block, all you hear is the press cycling and the soft sound of paper moving through. You're stuck between 2 bad choices. Accept a good enough sheet and risk getting caught, or stall and risk angering a guard who might decide you're not worth keeping alive. Tonight, they choose to stall. This push for perfection slows everything down, one fraction of a second at a time. The official term is authorized facsimile. But the reality is ink and hands that just won't be rushed. By dawn, Berger's fingers are black all the way to the cuticles. He dips them in water and watches it turn gray. The sheet on the wall stares back at him like a challenge, like a dare. By afternoon, the press room's perfect work moves down the hall. This room smells like pencil shavings and sweat. This is where fresh money learns to look worn. A printer named Moritz Nockstern runs the show. He lines up a row of men at long tables. A crisp new bill comes down the line. The first guy folds it once lengthwise. The second guy rubs the corner with his thumb, slow, deliberate, leaving a shine exactly where a thumb would naturally rest if this bill had actually been used to buy things for years. The third guy takes a pin and pokes a tiny hole right where bundles get pierced, then works it a little. The fourth guy marks the edge with a faint pencil line, the kind a clerk would make without thinking. The fifth guy scrapes the edge on a wooden lip to fray the fibers. Then they shuffle it, stack it, band it, and literally breathe on it. Make it breathe. There's a grading system. Grade 1 is the masterpiece. You could hand it to a bank manager in Zurich with 0 questions. Grade 2 passes in decent light. Grade 3 works with fast hands in dim rooms. Grade 4 isn't meant to fool bankers at all. It's just greasing wheels, moving things along. The grade decides where each batch goes. When the rhythm's right, a line of 40 or 50 guys can age a note every few seconds. At full speed, they push around 65,000 notes out of block 19 each month, over 2,000 a day, nearly one every minute. A guard pulls a fresh stack and fans it like a deck of cards. He picks one up, flips it over. He doesn't know about the serial numbers on the other side of the wall. All that matters is how it feels. He smells it. Real money smells like its history, ink and pockets and counters and hands. He nods and tosses the stack back. For the men at the tables, that nod means everything. Why does it work? Most people don't examine the watermark under bright light. They go by the snap of the paper and how the edges feel after being handled at a market or passed around. Real wear is random, but it follows patterns. Sweat marks show up where thumbs grip. Pencil marks appear where bundles get counted. Nockstern teaches these guys how to tell a story that real hands will believe. Dusk brings a problem. They're short on quota. The stack at the end looks perfect, but it's too clean. Pass it, and it might end up under a bright office lamp and get caught. Hold it back, and there's hell to pay. Smolyanov runs his finger along the edge and shakes his head. Too clean. Back to the top. They're going to make it breathe again. The guard at the door checks his watch, halfway between bored and alert. In London, the Bank of England is about to stop printing high-denomination notes. Not because of what they find under a microscope, but because of what they can't feel anymore: certainty. Block 19 doesn't hear any of this. All they hear is the press whistle starting the next shift. The men aren't just printing anymore. They're turning a lie into truth. It's late 1943, and the press room goes quiet when Oscar Stein sits down at his desk. He's the bookkeeper, the one making sure the numbers add up right, making sure they don't tell a story that could destroy everything. A prisoner with neat hands and a methodical way about him, he has this habit of tapping his pencil once before he writes anything down. In front of him sits a hard-bound ledger with ruled lines running across the pages like a slow river. Page after page, filled with ranges and notes about grades and bundles of bills. If those serial numbers ever match up with what's actually out there in the real world, if someone notices them, the whole operation falls apart. Everything stops. A runner brings over a stack of grade 1 notes. Stein opens the bundle, checks the range on the band, and looks it up in the ledger, making sure these numbers haven't been used already. Then he stops. "Not this range," he says. He flips back to yesterday's page and traces his pencil along the lines. There it is, the problem. These numbers are way too close to a batch that's already in circulation. If these notes end up at a bank window and someone actually looks at them, it could raise questions. Too risky. He calls Berger over and explains why this perfectly good stack of notes just became a problem. The press room needs to know, in the middle of the night, with eraser marks so light they look like snow on the page, just a whisper of paper dust, a correction gets made. That bundle goes back. A different one takes its place. The guard at the door sees nothing unusual, just work happening. By the time this ledger is full, it accounts for about 9 million forged notes, nearly $135 million in face value. One man with a pencil keeps it all straight. In a world built on lies, this secret record of a forgery operation becomes, years later, the honest measure of how well they actually pulled it off. Here's how serial shadowing works. If you want your fake bills to slip in with the real ones, you follow where the actual bank has already gone with its numbers. Pick ranges that won't bump into another batch in the same area at the same time. Watch the letter prefixes. Track how the clerks bundle things, how they stamp and move the paper through the system. Don't create obvious patterns. Patterns are what get you caught. The goal isn't to be invisible. It's to be believable. That takes careful pencil work and close attention. Not genius, just care. A quiet decision comes down. They could ship a borderline range tonight and hit their deadline, or hold it back, take the delay, and stay safer. Stein taps his pencil once, like he always does, and writes the hold. Years later, the very records that helped these fake notes slip through the system will help divers and museum curators point at a crate and say, this is how they tried to fool us. This is where they made their move. Hands doing the work become numbers on a page. The skill, the craft, all of it lives on in ledger lines that will outlast the ink on the notes themselves. May 1944. Inspection day. The room is spotless. Plates warmed. A portrait hangs under a lamp. The paper bright as fresh snow. Smolyanov picks up his loupe, leans in close, and breathes on the glass. The circle fogs. He wipes it with his thumb. Soft and quick. Again, he says. Then the order comes. Stop printing pounds. Start printing dollars. The $100 bill has Benjamin Franklin's face on it, a face every bank clerk knows better than any king's. It needs more ink, more security features, paper with texture that pushes back against counterfeiting tools. Smolyanov talks about failure in his own way. It lacks life, he tells Berger and Nocstern. A guard might think he's stalling, but they know better. They know what he means. Another day of work ahead. By early 1945, Franklin's face looks good under the loupe. The lines are sharp, but the paper is wrong, too flat. It's not taking the ink the way American paper should. Hold it at arm's length and it looks fine. Tilt it under a lamp and the surface doesn't catch the light right, the way a clerk would check it. Nothing passes inspection. April 1943 is gone now. High-value notes have been pulled from circulation. Trust is cracking. The cracks are spreading. In Block 19, guards say, faster, more often. The pressure builds into something that stops feeling like a choice. Push a plate that's almost done and hope the paper hides what's wrong, or hold firm and start the whole retouching process again from scratch. Smolyanov holds. He files away a hair-thin line in Franklin's hair, a line only he can see. Again, he says. Currency portraits work through micro-contrast, tiny shifts between light and dark that make a face look three-dimensional. Get the paper texture wrong and the ink sits on top instead of sinking in. Light bounces differently, the face goes flat. To fix it, you change the microscopic ridges so the ink grabs and releases in a way that makes the eye see life. The inspector keeps saying the authorized facsimile is almost there. The portrait still won't come alive. Days turn into weeks. Weeks stretch on. The calendar falls apart as the front collapses. The dollar order never produces a single note that passes under a lamp. The machine that demanded speed gets choked by its own standards. The same skill that once saved lives now holds back an empire's final scheme by millimeters. February 1945. The orders hit like a whip. The presses, they've been running constantly, filling the air with factory noise, suddenly go silent. That quiet doesn't last long. What follows is controlled chaos. Plates, papers, bundles, tools, everything gets cataloged, packed, labeled. The guards keep barking, faster, then careful. The cargo matters more than the men handling it. Everything moves. Sachsenhausen to Mauthausen to the tunnels at Redl-Zipf. Long black tunnels carved into rock, wet air inside, smelling like metal and batteries. A crate gets stuck on a ramp and starts to tilt. Berger and another guy throw their weight against it. The wood creaks, nails grind, the whole thing rocks. A guard lifts his rifle. Not to shoot, just to remind everyone he's there. Finally, the crate settles. The men breathe. Through it all, the ledger sits in its own crate, tied down tight. Once they reach Redlzipf, people start whispering. Liquidation. There's a list with names on it. Talk of trains going nowhere. Then new orders come. Move it all again. The notes, the plates, heading to lakes with unfamiliar names. Toplitsee, Grundlsee, cold, deep lakes. The men stacking and lifting don't think about that. They just feel the weight of the wood and the cold. At night, boats push along shallow water. Men lever crates over the side, one by one. Each one hits the water with a heavy splash and sinks. A guard yells, "Faster!" while another says, "Careful!" A crate slips and catches someone's shin. They wince. These bundles that looked like money during daylight just disappear into the water like stones. Someone could tear out a page from the ledger and hide it. Shoe, coat, sleeve, anywhere. But torn up, the ledger becomes useless. For it to matter later, it has to stay whole. So it goes into that night completely intact. The work is thorough. The hiding spot is smart. The silence holds. But more than a decade later, divers show up with knives and air tanks and pull the whole scheme back into daylight. The lake meant to hide everything ends up protecting the evidence better than any vault ever could. The work shifts from making to erasing. From now on, they're undoing what they made. By early May, the men who printed the money get marched to Ebensee. Rumors find them again. Liquidation, orders to kill. Whether someone misunderstood, a commander chose his words carefully, or time just ran out, the shots never happen. Something else does instead. The tracks start to sing. May 6th, 1945, early morning in Ebensee. The sky is gray and thin. Men are lined up on ground that's been packed down by thousands of boots over years. Word spreads through the column, "This is it." Then you hear it. The ground starts to shake. Tanks. Not execution squads. The guards look at each other, then down. Nobody shoots. Through the gate comes moving armor and soldiers without skulls on their uniforms. Adolf Berger is still breathing. So is Moritz Knockstern. They walk away from Block 19. The printing press sits silent. The sample on the wall is still perfect. The ledger, wherever it ended up, is safe because someone made sure it would be. Summer of 1959, Toplitsee Lake. Gerhard Zauner is swimming through a forest of logs that sank years ago. The water is freezing. His hands ache. He works a knife under a crate lid, and it gives. Water spits out a curl of paper that moves like a fish. He grabs it. A banknote, not ruined, not rotted, just cold and perfect and completely worthless. More finds keep happening. The search makes headlines in 1959. An illegal dive kills a teenager in 1963, and finally the government takes over the whole thing. By 2000, they're doing high-tech surveys with survivors, watching. The lake keeps its secrets, and then it gives them up carefully, one at a time. In cold, oxygen-free water, paper and ink survive for decades. The notes stay flat in their crates, away from air and hands. When museums finally get one, they treat it like evidence, proof of what really happened. They set the temperature and humidity to exact numbers, keep the light low. They do this because what's in that case tells the truth about what went down. The men who stamped these notes, authorized facsimile, left behind the best fake there is, a lake full of the real thing they wanted Britain to fear. Now it sits behind glass and explains why banknotes had to change, why high denominations disappeared, why they started adding security features, why money that looks simple is actually complicated, with details you can feel when you hold the real thing. Berger visits a display one day, older now, hair thin, voice steady. He tells a small group about the night the sheet on the wall became the standard and became a threat. His words move through a face that's lived through folding paper, pencil marks, hiding things. He doesn't give a speech. He hands around pictures and lets people make up their own minds. The redesign started rolling out. The 5-pound note got changed in the late 1950s, then the 10, 20, 50 over the following decades. Not because one lake gave up one box, but because the system learned that keeping things simple is like leaving the door open. The original operation was massive. Iron, men, printing plates, thousands of bundles. What came after was different. Time, policy. The slow, public work of making money harder to fake. 1963. Toplitsea Lake. Men without permission tried to take what was down there. Alfred Egner went under and didn't come back. The government stepped in because greed had made the place sacred in the worst way. From then on, it was careful work. Official. Slow. The thing that tried to steal the secret ended up protecting it. From hidden to seen. From threat to lesson. The story ends with glass and light. The same black water that swallowed the crates now reflects museum ceilings. What once moved through a camp to keep a man alive now sits in a case. The same thing, just transformed.